My name is Scott Challoner, and this is the Leaders Council podcast for the people who run the country and the people who keep the country running. You join us on what is a very bleak and cool winter day here in the capital, but I'm delighted to say that joining me on the show to hopefully add a little bit of warmth and brightness to affairs is first and foremost David Agar, and secondly as well we have John Gibson with us. Now David is a highly experienced tech sector entrepreneur specialising in creating value and scaling innovative and disruptive businesses in the UK, EU and US, and John Gibson is Managing Director at Aventus Law and Mediation Works UK, who of course also sits on the Leaders Council. Both of you, thank you so much for coming in, and it's a real pleasure having you both on the programme today.
Thank you, Scott. What an exciting opportunity today to speak to David about this amazing idea.
It is, exactly.
Thank you, John, and thanks, Scott, for this opportunity. Really looking forward to it.
Yes, likewise. Of course, what we are here to discuss today, just to contextualise for the listeners tuning in, is David's startup company, Ability Bank, which is in the process of building an inclusive digital banking solution for society's most vulnerable. Now, I suppose the first thing that we should establish is why this move has been necessary, because outwardly, people are going to look at this and they might think, oh, well, online banking is easy and convenient enough, but it isn't quite as straightforward as that, is it?
No, very, very much it isn't the case. I think it's very easy for people who, for example, do not have a disability, or are very comfortable about using, either not just digital banking, but also just using anything digitally, whether it's your mobile phone or laptop or whatever. You just automatically assume that if it works for you, then it must work for everybody else. So that most definitely is not the case, particularly for society's more vulnerable people, where people with disabilities. Whether it be neurological, which might include autism, or sensory, which could include sight or hearing, or indeed physical. And the numbers that we're talking about here are measured in the millions. So it really is a significant challenge for these people to even just experience what we all take for granted.
It's interesting,
David, Scott, I hope you don't mind me jumping in and adding something in that regard too.
Yeah, of course.
I would suggest that this open banking platform, it doesn't just optimise digital accessibility. It reduces anxiety for people. It helps them with their state of mind. There are so many vulnerable people out there who just can't get to grips. And not just people with a recognised disability, but perhaps the not so tech savvy people. And this really does help people with their state of mind, I would suggest, not just in terms of helping business or finance. It's a wonderful way of helping people.
Yeah,
that's absolutely right, John. On the one hand, you've got, how do people manage their finances? But there is all the social impact of what, when people are denied in some way of being able to do that easily, then as a minimum that can cause increased frustration, lack of independence. But in more extreme cases, then this can build on top of whatever's going through their lives at the moment, leading to mental health issues and, in extreme cases, financial exclusion.
Yeah, the social impact is going to be huge, isn't it? Because there are some 20% of adults in the UK at the moment that experience accessibility issues with mobile or online banking applications. And as we touched on there, frustration, isolation and potential financial exclusion are just three consequences to come of that. And they all drive that sort of lasting negative social impact that we've touched on. And the open banking platform that Ability Bank is putting together, that optimizes the user experience, doesn't it, for those with digital access needs, regardless of their sort of status regarding disability, age, or whatever devices they're using. So these people are being empowered, aren't they, to manage their own finances, and it increases that sense of independence, doesn't it, massively?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about empowerment. So, I think for a lot of people who traditionally have either struggled or shied away from using, in this case, banking apps, they've relied heavily on using the branch networks. But of course, over the last decade, we've seen a significant percentage of bank branches being closed down, often in sort of smaller towns and villages where, in fact, there's no branch banking available. So, what do these customers do? The banks just expect that everybody must go digital. So they want to close the branches down because effectively it's a cost to them. And why wouldn't everybody? Why would anybody not want to go digital? Well, there are millions of people out there who actually can't go digital in using existing banking apps. So for us, it was about trying to get down to the fundamentals involved, which is, for everybody, even with a disability, the responsibility of addressing your assistive technology needs. For example, if you are blind and in order to get by digitally, one of the first things that you will need to do is have a screen reader. But the responsibility is for you to understand what you need. Secondly, to be able to source that, and thirdly, to be able to configure it across whichever devices that you're using in order to be able for it to provide a benefit to you. Now, for some people that's not a problem. They're sufficiently tech savvy and they're capable of doing that and they're confident in doing that. But for many others, then they have to perhaps rely on friends or family or a colleague to do that, or even in more extreme cases, if they're receiving care, sometimes they actually provide their credentials to carers in order to get them to check their accounts or perhaps to make a payment. And of course, this is a very, very high risk approach to getting things done. But they feel they have no other option. So what we're trying to do is turn that on its head, completely on its head, so that when you come on to the platform, first of all, we assume no tech savviness whatsoever. All we will do is we will lead you through different questions that we will find out exactly where you're at, what your level of comfort is, what your required needs are, and as we are learning more about you, the platform will dynamically reconfigure itself to make it easier as we go further along the onboarding journey. And then, of course, at the end of the onboarding, we will therefore know what your needs are, so that every time in the future that you log back in, we automatically can access this information and say, right, okay, John Smith has now logged on. He has a requirement for a font of this particular type, point size, color contrast, and all the other different variables that go to make up the optimized user experience for each individual.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
So true. There's millions of people. Is it over 3 million people, David, that don't have use for a banking app at the moment? And this will just make everything so much more comfortable for people, won't it?
Yeah, that's right. There was a 2020 survey amongst people with disabilities, and this doesn't include people who don't have a recognised disability, but who are still wary of using anything digital. But in that survey, 43% of UK adults with digital access needs said that they did not use banking apps to manage their finances. And 43% is a mind-blowingly large figure.
Wow.
It's incredible, isn't it? It's a staggering figure. And
it's going to change the landscape entirely, isn't it, once this is all up on board?
I hope so. That is our goal. Part of the reason why we're doing this, and you could ask the question, well, why haven't the banks done it? Well, there's a number of different reasons. Firstly, they're not regulated to do it. The FCA, Financial Conduct Authority, who basically set out the ground rules for all the banks and financial institutions to adhere to, With them, it's an advisory. It's a very strong advisory, but it's an advisory nonetheless. So if the bank doesn't do it, or if the bank chooses to go a certain way down the road, then they can feel perhaps confident that they've met the expectation. But as I said, there's no prescriptive regulation here. So each bank's idea of what that might look like is what they will look to deliver. Another reason is because banks, generally speaking, are working on certainly the traditional high street banks. They're working with legacy systems, and these legacy systems go back to many decades ago, and there is an ongoing fear, I would say, of how much change you make to these legacy systems with the risk possibly of them breaking. And we saw only a few years ago, not many years ago, that a similar thing happened to the TSB migration to its new owner, and the bank customers were without service for several weeks, in some cases longer than that. So there's a level of hesitancy within banks to really make significant changes to their legacy systems. But hopefully, that's also part of the motivation for banks to work with fintechs such as ourselves, who can specialise in bringing certain things to the party as a third party integration, rather than attacking or impacting significantly on their core systems. But enough of the technical stuff. The bottom line is people are more vulnerable. People are not being offered the opportunity to have the same level of experience as others, and that's something that we are going to change.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And this could be the world's most inclusive digital accessibility technology. That's the bottom line, isn't it? This technology platform could enable everybody with access needs to easily manage their digital banking. Yeah.
And, also we're talking about banking because the first iteration of this will be focusing on, based on an open banking platform to allow people to manage their finances more easily. But the technology, forget banking, you can insert any sector that you like, so that when we have done this initial development, then the goal will be to further develop this so that it can work with any across any sector in any market. So it's very much a global vision. We're not restricting this to the UK, although we're starting in the UK. It's not a UK only solution. We want to help as many people on the planet as possible. And, according to the World Health Organization, there are over a billion people on this planet who have a recognized disability alone. But then, of course, you can significantly add to that the amount of people who just generally speaking are uncomfortable or even incapable of using digital services for whatever reasons.
Yeah. David, when you first mentioned this to me, the first person that came to my mind was my mum. And whereas she has mobility issues, she's sharp as anything in the mid to late 70s. Yeah. But she's uncomfortable with banking apps, and she doesn't engage with digital banking. And there's a conflict there because the banking industry worldwide has this drive to move towards digital banking and not use cash. And I think it's on the websites of some of the major banks and how they're working with tech partners. But it doesn't seem, from the research I've done, that anybody's engaged with this aspect of making people feel comfortable, people who wouldn't traditionally be comfortable. So I'm so proud. I'm so proud to be a member of the Leaders' Council. But I'm so proud to be your friend, David.
Mm.
But to work with you on this. But it's a wonderful drive towards helping people. It really is. Vulnerable people. People who would be less comfortable were it not for this idea.
Yeah, and they'd be locked out of the service, wouldn't they, without this development? Because if with this drive toward digital, I mean, ultimately, if there's a whole demographic of people that aren't comfortable with digital banking, you're locking that group of people out of banking services. So something like this, it's necessary, absolutely.
Well, that's the thing, John. You mentioned about the first person you thought of was your mum. It's actually not to do with intelligence at all.
No, she's very clever.
I was talking to somebody the other week, and they said, they're asking me what I was doing, what Ability Bank was about, and so I explained. And likewise, they said, well, funnily enough, I recently got my elderly parents who are both retired doctors, so intelligent people. I bought them an iPad so that I could keep in touch with them, but also that they could do their digital banking. But then they said, but they don't like to use it for digital banking because they're scared.
Yeah.
I think it's even down to some of the language that's used within existing apps. So, when you're going through the process to make a payment, and then just as a penultimate step, it's like, are you sure?
Mm.
Oh my goodness, are we really sure? I don't know. We are sure. Let's not do it. But it's an important point that you raised about how this resonates with people. So you mentioned your mum as an example. I recounted that story about somebody I was speaking to, but almost without fail, everybody who learns about Ability Bank and what its aims are and who it's looking to help and why, they almost all immediately come back with a story about either an immediate family relative or a close friend or work colleague, because they've had experience of this, but not necessarily understood it in this context.
No, and it's so real. These are real people with discomfort at the moment who you can bring comfort. So there's talk of course, this is lasting change for society in line with diversity and inclusion. But to a lot of people, those are just fancy words. What this really means is just making people feel so much more comfortable and ease of use, and it'll be so easy for people to use their banking in a much more comfortable way.
Absolutely. And I think as well, you touched on the point of what's known as the cashless society. So the trend was over the last decade has been there's been a reduced volume of cash transactions and an increase in credit and debit card transactions. So the trend was already there, but then when the pandemic happened and the instruction went out, stay at home, offices, businesses, shut up shop. That obviously meant, from a banking point of view, that all the branches needed to close temporarily. So, what did all the people who previously were reliant on branches? What position were they put in? They were put in an impossible position because if they had personal mobility issues, then maybe they couldn't even get out to a sort of a cash machine to take cash out. But even if you have cash, how can you complete a transaction or buy something if you're not stood in front of somebody? So this kind of goes back, without getting too legal about it, to the 2010 Equality Act, where there's a clear message there which says that nobody is meant to be put into a situation where they are disadvantaged compared to others. But that's exactly what has been and still currently is the case. So I I have a little phrase which I use, which is that the people that we're trying to help here are the world's largest minority.
Wow. Yes, that's so true.
And it's these people who've been afflicted by the digital divide that I think we've seen manifest itself more greatly than ever before during the COVID-19 pandemic, isn't it? It's bringing that disadvantage into this sort of world of accessibility, and it just shows how necessary this is. We're seeing it all across society at the moment.
Yeah.
I think there were many initiatives and examples during the pandemic, and how we certainly in the UK responded to that, where we kind of, there was a Thursday clap for the NHS, etc., where I think we as a society we sort of suddenly had time to stop and think about others, and become a little bit more caring, or certainly open to being more caring about others and appreciative of others' situations. So whether it be just checking in on your next door neighbour or whatever, but I think the society's consciousness towards being more caring has really reached a tipping point, so that I think all these things coming together, it's almost like the perfect storm. And obviously we want to be there. We want to make sure that we're out there as quickly as possible, so that we can add real value to and make a real lasting social impact on people's lives.
And it was,
it's for social good, David, isn't it? You've mentioned this. I can remember it sounded like a mission statement to me, but I think it just reflects your personality. The phrase was, helping society's most vulnerable. I wrote it down. I've got it here. Helping society's most vulnerable people by building the world's best accessibility technology for social good. Yeah, I think this has been something that's been developing you throughout your life. We've known each other quite a long time now, haven't we, David? And I can see that you're a man of ideas. But one idea hits another, and it sparks into a third, and then that third hits another, it sparks into a fourth, and so on. And I think it reflects your personality in the end. And you're a really caring man who likes to help people. And I think this has developed from your mind, if you don't mind me saying. It seems to be in line with that. It's social good. It's wonderful.
It is.
Very kind of you say that, John. I think I've always taken the view, going back to when I had my very first business, which was some time ago now, that first of all, everybody who joins you, they're on the journey. They have their own contribution to make, and there is no monopoly on having the best ideas that sits with the founder or the CEO. Far from it. You will get to your destination faster, more effectively, and have a lot more fun if everybody on that journey understands where we're trying to get to and feels that their contribution will be valued. So I've always taken the approach of having, an inclusive approach, I guess you could call it. And so over the years, you as you say, you kind of you gain experience, you gain knowledge, and you can always retain that and pull upon that in order to ensure that whatever it is that you're working on now or today or tomorrow is the best it can be, which is what I'm trying to do now. So I guess, although I didn't, I do call myself a tech sector entrepreneur, and this is very much in terms of the solution. This is a tech solution, but the reality is it's something for social good, and doing something that's good actually makes you feel good. That's how I feel.
And that's social good as well.
It's not your first start, is it? You've had a few. And it's a combination of your ideas in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess it is. So this would be my fifth startup. I started off in the very early days of mobile communications, and then that sort of went. My first business had offices in the UK and the US and also in Europe, and then that morphed into sort of different strands of within communications called IoT, the Internet of Things, which helps to enable us to have more information that we can use to make better informed decisions about pretty much everything. And then about 6 years ago, I got into financial services, and during the course of that, that's when I sort of came up with this, or came across the problem. So my son is dyslexic, and I was with a startup, and we were going. It's an FCA regulated startup, and we were going through the process of getting the license in place, and then building out the proof of concept and the MVP, the minimum viable product, to the point where we were ready to beta launch. And during all of that development and time spent with CTOs and chief technology officers and with development teams, nobody, including myself, mentioned the word accessibility. Now, that particular service was going to end up with an app, a mobile app, for people to use to make payments, to send money overseas. And it doesn't. The stats don't change. Up to 20% of your audience are likely to have disability and/or accessibility needs. But yeah, we had never mentioned it. We've never catered for it, and so potentially we're only ever going to hit 80% of our target audience.
Yeah.
So there's for businesses out there, all businesses, there is the sooner they are aware of this and cater for the world's largest minority, then there are actually bottom line benefits to putting in the effort in this area.
But it strikes me that all the practicalities have been taken care of, but where's the humanity? Where's the stuff about people's feelings and how comfortable they were in the state of mind? And I think it takes somebody who's got that kind of philosophy, such as you, David, to put two ideas together like that and think, there's a lot of people here who really need help.
Well, I think because my son is dyslexic, even though I'm not, I obviously have a kind of a once removed understanding of some of the challenges. I don't profess to understand all of his challenges, but certainly some of them. And so therefore, when it came to an appropriate time to open a bank account for him, I had to do it in the end on his behalf, because he would have failed. He wouldn't have known how to go about it. He wouldn't have understood the process or anything like that. And so, had I not been his dad, and if he'd literally been on his own, then he would have probably fallen into that group of people who were financially excluded.
It would have been awful, wouldn't it? It would have been terrible.
How will it make people feel more comfortable, practically?
I think once they're on board, and that then all of a sudden they can actually see, on their screen, whether it's mobile phone or other device, iPad or whatever, that they can see their financial footprint right in front of them, so they'll be able to see their transactions in a way that they can understand. And there'll be lots of other things that we're other sort of value adds that we'll be incorporating to make.
And it's not just seeing, is it? This is for the sight impaired too.
Oh no, absolutely.
The main drive. Yeah,
absolutely. Because there are 2 million people in the UK who are registered blind.
Yeah.
And there's 6 million who are been assessed as being dyslexic. The numbers just keep on going. And so, but we understand, and when we want to support people's learning, so that particularly if you've not been used to being able to, or being in a position where you could manage your own finances, then for some people it's like, oh gosh, I've now got access to all this information. I can see it. I can understand it. Or I can manage it. But what is it that I'm expected to do now? How can I best manage my finances? Because I have not really been in a position to do that before. So, we will have things within the dashboard, so like financial management tools, etc. Again, none of this will be techno-speak. None of this will be complex in terms of how it's presented to the user. It will all be as if you and I were talking face to face, and you asked me a question to explain something, and I was saying it to you. It's a human approach to
simple English.
Yeah,
you've mentioned that before, haven't you? Yeah.
And that's what it needs to be. It needs to be ultimately accessible like that, doesn't it?
I can't wait to show this to my mum.
Fantastic. And I think we should touch on as well just sort of where we're at with it at the moment. I mean, I understand the business first sort of launched in May of 2020, so during the pandemic, and the management team right now is together, but you're working pro bono until sort of funding starts to come into the business. And then you've also got a charitable pledge for the future to ultimately donate 10% of annual profits to charity partners as well. So there's even more incredible intent there.
Yes. So the position that we're in at the moment is that we started off our research and development stage in May 2020, and we carried on with that until towards the end of that year. Then we had sufficient information together to be able to put together the bones of a proof of concept. So, if anybody is not familiar with proof of concept, this basically turns out to be an example of a working app, shall we say, in limited form, but something that's tangible that you can see on a device, which would take you through the experience of how you go through the onboarding process, and then how you see what the information that's available to you once you've completed that, and indeed to make a payment, make payments to different parties. So, so that's not launched publicly, but it was just something for us to be able to show to others. And we applied for an Innovate UK grant to support that build, which we're successful in, which I'm eternally grateful towards the guys at Innovate UK for supporting that. And so once that was completed, that meant that we were able to begin talking to prospective partners. And partners for us really covers two sides of the coin. On the one side, we are talking to many of the leading disability charities, because they are obviously their reason for existing is that they're looking out for the best interests of their communities. And many of them have digital inclusion teams, and so we have been discussing with them and saying, look, this is what we're planning to do. We'd very much like to partner with you so that we can share information. You can download to us the kind of things that would make it ideal for your community in order to be able to manage their finances, so that we can finesse our solution to accommodate that, and so at the end of that, it means that the relevant communities that we're the bodies that we're working with that support those people, they've actually got something which is almost customized to meet the specific needs of the people they represent, which is really fantastic. So that's on the one side of things. The flip side to that is on the business side. So potential partners for us would include working with sponsors, which could be corporate organisations, also with banks, because this is not about working with a bank, for example, to give them some kind of exclusive benefit and differentiator to only offer it to their customers. this is way above that. And in fact, when it's almost the first thing that I talk to when I'm speaking with potential banks and financial institutions, just to get it out, elephant in the room, well and truly spotlighted, is to ensure that they're participating because they see the greater good. Yes, there will be a commercial return, but we are pledging 10% of all our profits to be distributed across our partner charities. So it's very much about giving, doing good, tech for good, and putting aside the sort of the regular corporate greed, if you like, and taking the opportunity to grasp the nettle and say, yeah, I'm prepared to work with everybody because this is all about inclusion and inclusivity. And
there's a beautiful ethos there, isn't there? I think a wonderful mission statement or objective. And it's not just an excellent business idea. If there are any partners out there listening to this and thinking, wow, this sounds amazing, you welcome partnerships, don't you? And working together to empower people and help inclusivity of vulnerable people.
Yeah, absolutely. The more, as I said, we're all about inclusivity. So there's nobody that we're going to exclude, as long as that they are, they buy into the goals that we're looking to achieve. So yeah, any prospective partners who would like to find out more or feel that that this is in line with perhaps their thinking on things like ESG, environmental, social, and governance, which is very much the hot topic of the moment for many organisations. But there's one thing to talk about, all the high level sort of ESG stuff, but on a practical level, how does that manifest itself? How can a large organisation that has these policies, ESG policies, documented, and so yeah, that's one tick in the box. But actually, it's not about ticking the box; it's about what you deliver. And so I think working with us, for example, we can give them a real opportunity to show some results and some absolutely hands-on involvement where they can legitimately put their hand in the air and say, yeah, these are our views on ESG, and working with Ability Bank is one of the ways in which we help to deliver those.
Yeah, wonderful.
It's incredible.
Disruptive innovation is a tremendous opportunity for many people, isn't it? Not just to make money from a business point of view, which of course is why a lot of people get out of bed, but also to feel satisfied and happy that people have made a difference and really helped people in the caring way.
Yeah, I mean, I always say, if after all of this effort and putting it all together, which I know it will come, we're still going through a fundraise at the moment to help us on to the next step. But if we can just help one person, that would be sufficient for me to feel that we've actually achieved something.
And that's what it's all about, isn't it? That's what essentially makes all of the effort worthwhile, that sort of social good. And I think that ethos, working with that ethos, showing that persistence, that eventually is going to reap the rewards, isn't it, compared to being more profit orientated.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think there are other organisations which have recently come to the fore as well. So there's an organisation called the Valuable 500, which is an amazing organisation, which was the brainchild of Dr. Caroline Casey. And what she wanted to do, what her vision was to invite 500 leading organisations across the world who would make a commitment within their organisations to increase inclusion and diversity, but with particular focus on disability. So whether that means being more proactive in terms of employing and considering people with disability for roles, but also having plans and goals to actually make a difference when it comes to anything to do with disability and inclusion. So, if you actually check out the Valuable 500 and look at the roll call of participants, it is literally an A to Z of leading global organisations. And for the ones who are not part of that at the moment, if you're looking into it, get a move on. If you're not looking into it, shame on you.
I don't think you could put it any better than that. Absolutely right. And anybody tuning in that may be interested in, of course, taking part in this. David, what's the best port of call for anyone that may be tuning in to sort of get in touch and really get involved in this incredible initiative?
I think the first port of call probably easiest would be either to go to LinkedIn, to my profile page, David Agar, or alternatively, if you go to the digitalability.co website, but you can email me as well, david@digitalability.co, and obviously I will respond promptly.
Absolutely fantastic.
Ability Bank is the future, isn't it? This is how people are going to be helped and feel comfortable in using digital banking. Yeah. I'm proud to be associated with Ability Bank.
Well, I've got to say, John, big thank you, heartfelt thank you from my side too, because you've been a really enthusiastic supporter from the moment that I first shared Ability Bank with you, and to the point where that you're very proactive in helping us to tread the right path, and so thank you very much for that.
Well, it's so kind of you, but from the very first moment you started speaking about this, I was so enthused by this wonderful idea. Ability Bank really will help society's most vulnerable people with banking. And the way the banking industry is going towards digital banking rather than cash, it's going to be absolutely necessary that somebody helps these people. And you stepped forward, I think, due to your people personality. You like to help people. You're very caring. And it's one idea fitting another and sparking into a third. Ability Bank is the future, I'm sure of it.
Well, maybe there's an element of right place, right time, but, I reached a certain point in my life where, I want to make a difference, and I want to make a difference for good. At the end of the day, accessibility in any of its forms is a basic human right. So, and I'm thrilled as well that for some of the support that we're already receiving from some very well-known names, not least of which is Lord Blunkett, who very kindly said that that he believes Ability Bank will create a significant positive social impact. And as I'm sure most of you will know, Lord Blunkett has been a tireless campaigner in such matters to do with disability and inclusion. And we are thrilled and very proud that he's recognised that in us, and we really value his support.
The Leaders' Council gets this wonderful message out to people, doesn't it? And David Blunkett leading the Leaders' Council is an absolutely wonderful ambassador.
Yeah, he is.
I recall him being incredibly enthused by the whole idea for sure, and he was incredibly impressed by the limitless potential that it certainly does have. And before we do sort of wrap up on the programme today, gentlemen, I would like to talk about sort of the immediate future for Ability Bank. We've spoken a lot about the long-term vision, but as we sort of get to grips with the rest of this new year, 2022, that we find ourselves in, what's on the horizon for Ability Bank in this next 12 months? What's this next step going to be?
So the next step for us is that we're in the middle of a fundraising round at the moment, which we hope to conclude in really by April time, and that will then give us the appropriate resourcing to complete the build, which will take us to our beta launch. The beta launch which would mean that the service would be available for the first time to the public, should be ready, other things being equal, before the end of the year, or at the very worst, it will be ready for the first January in 2023. I'm hoping we can do it in Q4 for this year, 2022. And once we go live, then that's when the real work starts. Because chasing a solution or a platform to help people who are vulnerable and perhaps with disabilities, it's an ongoing thing. Our goal is to make it the best possible user experience for everybody. We know that we will never achieve that, but it won't stop us chasing it. So we'll be learning all the time. We'll be interacting with our users, and we'll definitely be open to any form of feedback and input. Because the bottom line is, we just want to make it work and accessible for as many people as possible.
We're never a finished product, are we? So it's a constant state of flux, as you say there, a constant state of improvement. And hopefully 2022 is going to be the first, well, I should say next step on that incredible journey that Ability Bank is on. And I do wish you, David, the very, very best of luck in making this vision a reality. And I think over the next few months, as we do start to see things develop, I would relish the opportunity to welcome you back onto the programme just to see how things are coming along and how that vision is really starting to be borne out, because it's an incredible mission that Ability Bank is on, and it deserves and warrants revisiting. I'm certain of that.
It's so kind.
That would be great, Scott, and obviously we'd be delighted to do that. I think just one final shout out for me, just on a kind of broader UK PLC front. This is the fintech sector. The UK fintech sector is global market leading, and this is another opportunity for the UK to really show what it can deliver, and in our case, with something that has global scalability, but to make a real difference to people's lives. So, I think the UK sector has got a tremendous amount to offer, particularly post-Brexit, and so we'll be doing our bit to try and make that a success.
And the key thing is it's a scalable product, and it's in the market for what I would say are the right reasons to really make a difference to people's lives, which is absolutely incredible. I have to say, David, it's been incredible welcoming you onto the programme, and yourself as well, John. Thank you both ever so much for joining us, and do take care and stay safe with all still going on in the world as well at the moment. It was a great pleasure welcoming David Agar and John Gibson onto today's programme to talk all about Ability Bank and its potential to create real social change. And I do hope that everybody tuning into today's programme really enjoyed the interview and relished it just as much as I. If you have been listening into this episode and you feel that you have your own story of success and innovation to share with us here at the Leaders Council, then by all means we want to hear from you. So why don't you apply to be on the show as well via leaderscouncil.co.uk/apply. Until next time, take care everyone, and goodbye.